Hello YouTube. In this video I'm going to explain to you exactly why programming is so important and why people who don't do it are really shooting themselves in the foot and hurting their gains in the long run. If you've been watching the channel for any amount of time, you've noticed that I have a strong focus on programming. And this is because I believe that for natural lifters, it is the most important variable to control. And I put that way above nutrition or any amount of recovery because what you do in the gym matters as much, if not more, as the time you spend recuperating from it. To me, that is, of course, pretty obvious. But for some, it's not. And I still have people, not necessarily on this channel, but outside of it, on YouTube Fitness, who don't grasp the full importance of programming. So I want to lay it bare for you and explain in simple terms why I insist so much on it and why anyone who is interested in becoming big as a natural should as well, because it is essential. Now, if we're going to go back to the basics and talk about muscle building functions through a very simple process, which is muscle fiber damage. This is how you build muscle. You tire the muscle down, you attack it in a sense, and it has to have a defense mechanism in place so as not to break, which is the repair portion of the recovery. So you break down muscle fibers, they recuperate, they become bigger because the muscle knows it has to be stronger for the next time you do something, and therefore the muscle grows over time. This is how 100% of people grow their muscles. It's as simple as this. This means that there are really two portions to muscle building. There's the active and the passive. The active is the training and the passive is the recovery. Although you could argue that recovery is also an active thing because you're actively doing it. But since it's of rest, of nutrition, which I consider to be baselines, I like to call it a passive. So these are the two aspects. And one of these two aspects is discussed lengthily on YouTube Fitness and overblown in my opinion, and that's the passive. Many people will tell you nutrition is the most important thing, recovery is the most important thing, and they're right, but only if the training portion of the equation is taken care of. If it's not, it loses its importance. That's the trick. Nutrition is, yes, primordial, only if your training is also on point. If it's not, it loses any meaning. So this is where programming comes into play. Because how do you get muscle fiber damage to justify the nutrition and the recovery? Well, you get through fatigued state. You tire the muscles, we call it being fatigued, and then when you recover, it grows. If you're never fatigued, you can never recover. It's like sleeping. If you're never sleepy or tired, you'll never sleep. So sleep loses its purpose. Its very purpose was to help you regrow, to help you rest. If there's no need for rest, then the rest is useless. That is also obvious. And where does the fatigue come from? The fatigue always comes from the training. So the training is the most important thing. And how do you train? You program. And this is where I'm getting into the meat and potatoes of it. Because many people would be in agreement with me up to this point and say, okay, I agree with everything you just said, except that last part, because you can train without programming. And to that I will say, no, you cannot. You can think that you're not programming, but in reality you are. You're just not aware of it. Because even if you don't program, you program. It's just that you're not aware of it. Just like when you sleep, even if you don't dream, you still dream. You just don't know because you don't remember your dreams. Anytime you train in the gym, there is somewhere in the ether of the galaxy a program being written, because anything and everything you do as in terms of exercises can be in a sense cataloged and logged and written down. That is your program. Even if you have no idea about it, it's still there. Go to the gym, do 30 push-ups, hey, that's a program. You never planned to do it, but it's still a program because it's what led to the fatigue. So that's for all of the naysayers and program deniers that think that it's optional. It's not. Whether you want to do it or not, it's gonna happen. So might as well pay attention to it, because training is pretty much only numbers, right? It's the amount of weight you lift, it's the amount of reps you do, the amount of days you train. All of that is numbers. It's basic math. Numbers are hard facts. They're on papers. You don't negotiate with numbers. They're there and that's it. And we all know it because that's what we use to train and to program. It's those numbers. But just because you ignore the numbers doesn't mean that they don't exist. Imagine if someone didn't know that math existed. Well, sorry for you, bud, but math exists in nature, just like physics or biology. It's something that humans observed and then put on paper to be able to actually study it. Just because you refuse to do that part doesn't mean that it's not a part of life anymore. You still have to use math, you still have to actually pay attention to numbers. And so that's what programming does. Programming is the science of numbers in relation to training. It's spending time looking at these numbers and trying to optimize them as much as possible. Because when it comes to numbers, and that is true in training and in life, you either control them or they control you. If you have a bank account or a credit card and you just spend and you don't look at the numbers, guess what? They're still accruing. These numbers are going to come to bite you in the ass at some point, but you refuse to pay attention, so they're going to control your life at some point. If you are in control of your finances, it would never happen. Same for your training. These numbers are there. The amount of the weight you move on the bench, the amount of reps on squats, that's there. You're doing it in your training. So it's the smart move to actually write it down, to be in control so that you can predict what you have to do and also remember with time. It's that binary beauty of programming in a sense. It's both a memory log that allows you to remember what you did in the past, which helps you predict what you must do in the future, and the two combined allow you to control the present. It is the point of it. There is also no such thing as someone training without a program. I reiterate, but some people don't get it. I have many people who tell me, oh, I've made great gains without a program. No, you had a program, you just never wrote it down. But for the vast majority of people, your best gains will come from a program. There's a reason why YouTube Fitness was such an important part of the global fitness communities, that it introduced the notion of programs. It existed in the past on forums, but it was never as democratized as it is nowadays. Why? Well, because once you can give someone a hard copy of what they have to do, it's easier to, in a sense, standardize the gains and make sure that most everyone can get the best of it. Because if you just rely on people's ability to instinctively come up with a good program with no base knowledge, you will find out that most people do random bullshit, which is why programs are so important. They are, in a sense, it's our memory. It's like the Library of Alexandria. It's our collective knowledge regarding training that we pass down to one another. That's why it's so important, even historically and culturally speaking. Some programs become cultural icons, like 5x5 or like Starting Strength. They have an existence outside of the numbers even. They became, in a sense, representations of a glorious or not so glorious past regarding the situation. It depends on your stance on it. So for those who think they train without a program, no, it's simply that you're not keeping track. But you are using a program. It's just going to be bad because you're not paying attention to it. And I would like to liken this behavior and this attitude to something I've seen in real life as well. It's those people who don't want to admit that there is something out there they don't know about or could be outside of their control. And it can relate to any level of non-believers or any level of people who are going to deny entire portions of science. You can really see it all the time. Even in academia, for me, the example that resonates the most with me is I was studying literature and I was always tired of people saying, oh, well, you know, all of these interpretations, well, it's never really what the author meant. What they mean is you're reading into what the author had to actually put down on the page, and it never meant that in the first place. This is interesting because it shows insecurity in them. For the most part, I've always seen that type of people. It's those that cannot access that meaning, and so when you point it out, they get upset because they didn't understand it in the first place, so they would prefer that it never existed. So they denounce it and they try to refute it in a sense. This refusal to face reality is present in people who refuse to program, because they think that if they just do this, it's like the wood disappears around them. When you play hide and seek with kids, if they're very young, they do that sometimes. They hide and they do this because they think that if they cannot see you, you cannot see them. Well, it's fine when you're a toddler, but when you're an adult, it's not acceptable. Faire l'autruche, okay, doing the ostrich means putting your head in the sand, is not an acceptable way to approach your training. It just means that you're going to be missing out on so many things. So please, Pay attention to your training, pay attention to the variables. And the only way to do that is to actually program. Now, if programming still occurs even when you are not paying attention, this means that for the people who do it, they rely on something that is not what they think it is. And that thing is instinct. Many of these people will say, I train with my instinct. And they don't understand how wrong they are and how interesting it is actually, because in their mistakes, they're pointing out something pretty cool in my opinion. You use your instincts via your reasoning skills. Your instincts is like a message that your body sends that is just primal and biological that you interpret with your intellect. If you didn't have the intellect, you wouldn't have access to the instinct. It would stay in a language that you cannot comprehend. So when these people say it, they're essentially painting the proper picture of what programming is, which is a mixture of intellect and instinct. It's not just one or the other, it's both at the same time. But it's impossible to access your instinct if you refuse to think. So for the people who train with their instincts, no, you're basically tossing a dice every time you train. That's what you're doing. You're not training with your instincts. People who program are training with their instincts, and I'm going to prove it to you. But first, I want to, in a sense, call out the people who promote instinctive training, because they tend to always use the same arguments that, in my opinion, are not valid. And usually what they are going to say is that instinctive training is the best type because it's hardcore. Well, it's coming into the gym and you do what must be done, and it's like it's being a man. Well, being a man is being smart to me. It's not just being physically dominant, it's both at the same time. If you're just physically dominant, well, first off, you will never get there if you never program. But two, you are the equivalent of a baboon. It's not very interesting. You want to also be in control of the spiritual and the mental. And so, for those who say that instinctive training is special or it makes you better, no, it makes you worse because it's lazy. You refuse to put in the work. You refuse to sit down and actually spend some time thinking about your training. You just want to be a gym bro that comes in and does a few curls, and then you wonder why you get no results. This is why. You're missing an important part of the training, which is the thinking about it. Anything we do in life, you think about it first. You plan, you scheme. That's what programming is. It's preparing what you're going to do in the gym to make it as optimal as possible. So, by doing instinctive training, you're really wasting your time because you didn't prep beforehand. Those who prep get 100% of the hours they put in because the hours are planned. But it's no wonder that this type of mindset and hardcore persona is promoted by one type of person in particular, which is PD users. PD users are the biggest proponent of instinctive training. Why? Because it doesn't really matter what they do in the gym, they grow. So they get to use their instinct, which really means I do whatever the fuck I want. So that way I don't have any restrictions. It works for them, but it will not work for you. And the fact that they rely on freedom to sell that idea is also ironical in a sense because it isn't freedom. If you think about it again, you use your instincts and you tap into it through your reasoning skills. So if you refuse to use your brain, well, you're not using your instinct either. But more than that, you're not free because you cannot be free if you are not in total control of the environment. That also should be obvious. Because freedom in reality is about restriction. It's about what you allow yourself to do or not. It becomes restrictive on your own freedom when other people are imposing the restrictions. But if it's you, that's what life is about. You can't just do whatever you want, even in terms of societal applications or rules or regulations. There needs to be rules put in place to sort of control the interactions amongst people. It's out of topic, but for you yourself, in terms of programming, that's what we do. Freedom is found in a restriction. If you can restrict yourself within an area, that is a program. That program allows you to be free within that area, and that is the beauty of it. So at the end of the day, it leads instinctive training to be non-instinctive, because you're not using your instinct, and the complete opposite of freedom, because you are so free to do whatever you want that you're not free at all. And this also extends to life in general for people who think that freedom is the abolition of rules. No, that's actually prison. It's a different thing altogether, but maybe that's a topic that interests you. I can talk about that another day. So, since freedom is found in a restriction, a program frees up your mind because if you actually spend time on it, you realize one thing. If you have to come into the gym and then instinctively guess what you have to do with no prior memory of what you did in the past or what you have to do in the future, are you really free? You're going to spend the entire workout thinking about what you have to do next. If you even do it. If you don't, it just means that you do whatever, which is even worse. The person who is free in spirit and body is the person who programs. You come into the gym, you know what you have to do. I don't even have to check my program because it's like a part of me now. I know it by heart. When I come into the gym, I know exactly what I have to do. And this allows my mind to be 100% focused on the weights, on the movements. That is true freedom. You can finally focus on your training. You pay the price beforehand to program, which allows you to then be laser focused. Those who just do it with instinct and who tell you that programming is for nerds and it's a waste of time, they never get that freedom. You can if you just put in the work. And you find out also that only those who program can train intuitively. I've already said that. Once you have the cerebral part already under control, now you can use your instincts because you are within limitations. So you can determine on the same day if your program has leeway, what you want or what you don't want to do. That's what rotations are for. Rotations are not necessarily weekly. I have rotations in my program that are just arbitrary. I can rotate whenever. It's up to my discretion, and I usually use my instinct. And by instinct, I mean that I know intuitively what I have to work because I have past knowledge of what I hate the rest of the week, so I know what I can and cannot do. That's what most people call autoregulation. But listen to the terms and the semantics. Autoregulation, there's regulation in there. What is a regulation? It's a restriction, but it's auto. It's one that you imposed on yourself, that the self is in control of, and that is also what makes it work. You cannot auto-regulate if you've never regulated in the first place. So it's a privilege only afforded to people who program. If you never program, you're never able to actually auto-regulate properly. And this also means that you track numbers. And tracking numbers, by the way, is essential, yes, but it's also very try-hard. And you see that discrepancy and dichotomy with the instinctive trainers who don't really like that because they want to be the tryhards, but at the same time they understand that they just give up on a portion of the training knowledge and principles. So they try to fire back by using the very compliment that they give themselves. So they are hardcore and tryhards because they don't train with a program, but we are tryhards in the negative sense because we use programs. I have an advice for you in life. Everything you do in life, you always want to be a tryhard. The tryhards are the ones who succeed. Those who don't try hard suck forever, and their only recourse is pointing you out and saying, wow, he's actually trying hard. Yes, I am, because I want to make something out of myself. So disregard these people, be a tryhard, be a massive tryhard in everything you do, and be very serious about it. Because it ensures intensity and progression. Again, for the people who just randomly guess what exercise they're going to do on that day, you can't be intense because intensity is a number and you ignore numbers. So you can scream when you curl as much as you want. It's not intense. And for progression, how are you supposed to progress if you're not tracking the numbers you're lifting? You're just, again, in the dark. There's a reason why these people make no gains whatsoever. And it also makes you smart. And I think it's an important part of this entire thing, to become smarter. We're not just in it to become bigger, we want both the brain and the muscles to grow. And so programming is going to help in that. This is why many anti-program gurus are, in a sense, trying to dumb down their audience as much as possible. They don't want you to become smart. They don't want you to program for yourself. One, because it keeps you dependent on them. You can always be milked out of your hard-earned cash for the programs they make, because sometimes these hypocrites create programs. They preach instinctive training, they create programs that they sell you. But most importantly, they can also keep selling you things because you're never going to take your independence. When you know how to program, you can do it yourself. You don't have to wait for people, and so you cannot be sold anything anymore. And this makes programming, in a sense, a revolutionary and rebellious practice. It's trying to claim back your identity, claim back who you are. And as for the excuses that I hear a lot for people who also like to present programming as something that can be detrimental, the paralysis by analysis doesn't really work in that sense. People think, oh, you're going to spend so much time on the books and writing stuff that you're never going to be able to actually train and you're never going to do anything. That's not true. The people who get paralyzed are the people who listen to other people constantly about programs and take too much information in without any work. That is when this occurs. But for the people who program and then train, it does the exact opposite. Because a program should be exciting, it should fire you up, you want to go into the gym and actually do it. And so you're going to train. The best motivator in terms of lifting weights is programming because it keeps it fresh and it keeps you in control. And when you're in control, by default, you're more free and therefore you are able to just express yourself as much as you want. And that is what keeps people going, by the way. All of the people, the top naturals I know who've been training for 10 years, they all program. Even if it's not to the level of what I do, they program, right? Because as I said, everyone programs. You don't have to have smarty glasses and your smarty pants to be able to talk about programming. Some people, I'm going to mention, for example, Eric Bugenhagen, he might not have the same inclinations I have, but the guy programs. He's not just a dumb meathead. And that is true for all of the people who get far. They program. They know it all. They might not want to publicize it, but they do. The rest of them, however, are usually PD users, so you should be very careful about them. Now, I want to also offer a different perspective on paralysis by analysis, because as I just said, this won't happen if you simply program and train. But something I never heard discussed is immobilization by action, right? I can make rhymes too. Immobilization by action is people who are constantly doing things instinctively, quote unquote, but who never go anywhere. They just spin their wheels forever, and yet they train. And the reason why is they never stop to think. Just like the person who's paralyzed by analysis spends too much time thinking, these guys spend too much time doing and they never think about what they're doing, so it never actually works. It's the opposite side of the same coin, and that coin cannot buy you anything because your money is no good. It's worthless money. It's DL money. It's, at the end of the day, what creates small people. It's one of these two things. Neither of them are good. So the instinctive training crowd needs to abide by this advice as well. You are going to be immobilized by your incredible active approach to training that leads to no results. So, to finish up and to conclude, if you want an objective way to create and measure progress, you should program for all of the reasons I've already discussed. It's also going to help you build your identity, because it's like, in a sense, writing a book. And I can tell you that the first time you have your own program, you're going to be like a proud papa. You're going to want to share it with the world because you're going to be so excited. I want you to feel that excitement. It's going to feed your gains in the long run. Also keep in mind, for the people who only really react or are responsive to that type of argument, that programming is a science. So if you're the type of guy who's all about science, well, this is it. Programming is a hard science with hard numbers, so you should feel right at home. And just like any proper science, it is reproducible. So from individual to individual, you can have similar results or close to similar, and it can be passed down. So it's knowledge you're going to accumulate from people like me and many others, and you're going to be able to teach others as well. That is the proper type of knowledge that should be promoted on this platform. Instinctive training, the way these people do it, where you just come in and just wing it, yeah, you can't pass that down. It's not possible. On top of that, again, it's not even passing, you can't even pass it down in terms of DNA with your instinct because you're not really using your instinct. And so I'm going to leave you with that. I hope that it was convincing for the few of you that were still on the brink or on the verge about programming. Yes, it will be worth it. Yes, it's a little bit intimidating, but I can guarantee you it is absolutely essential because whether you actually want to put in effort or not, you're doing it regardless, so might as well try hard and actually do something about it and be in full control. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.